Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Chief Petty Officer Gian Archer. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of St Mary's School from Williamstown, Victoria. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is God by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here, we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, flowers of the forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Trooper Francis Herbert Whitehouse. Francis Whitehouse was born on the 20th of April 1917 in Laidley, Queensland. Affectionately known as Frank, he was one of 11 children born to local farmer Charles Whitehouse and his wife Sarah. After he finished his schooling, he joined his father working on their property named Tupcott Farm. When he was 23, he married Florence Crosby on the 5th of February 1940 at St Saviour's Church, Laidley. The young couple later had a daughter. Francis enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 27th of May 1940 alongside his brother Benjamin. He was followed by his brother Ivor, who enlisted in June, and by his brother Charles, who enlisted in July. Francis and his brothers were all assigned to the 7th Division Cavalry Regiment with the rank of private. Francis trained briefly at Enoggera in Queensland before being moved to Cowra, New South Wales, where he was trained in the operation of Vickers light tanks and machine gun carriers. In November 1940, Whitehouse and his comrades were granted 10 days leave before being sent to the front. On Boxing Day the following month, Frank and his brothers embarked from active service on board the troop ship Queen Mary. Whitehouse arrived in Egypt in early February 1941. His unit moved to Palestine shortly after, where they continued training. Soon after, he became ill and was sent to the 5th Australian General Hospital, suffering from inflammation of the optic nerves behind his eyes. He rejoined his unit in early March and was moved to the Suez Canal, where his unit assisted with defences. In May 1941, Whitehouse's unit was sent to Cyprus in support of British troops who were preparing to defend the island from a potential German invasion. They were then moved to Syria in early August, where they served as part of the garrison force after heavy fighting against Vichy forces a month earlier. Whitehouse and his brothers returned to Australia with their unit in early 1942, shortly after Japan's entry into the war. They arrived in Adelaide in early March, after which they moved to Landsborough on Queensland's Sunshine Coast, where they continued training. Whitehouse was granted a month's leave without pay, probably to spend time with his wife and daughter. He rejoined his unit in June during a period of restructuring in which his regiment was designated as the 2nd 7th Cavalry Regiment. In September, his regiment was sent to Papua to help defend Port Moresby against the Japanese advance. Deployed without tanks or armoured cars because of the unsuitable conditions on the island, the 2nd 7th Cavalry served as infantrymen, alongside Australian troops who had been fighting in Papua since July. In December, they were flown to Popondetta on the north coast in order to reinforce Australian units based there. On the 18th of December, they were moving to a place known as Huggins Roadblock when Whitehouse's squadron encountered a Japanese patrol. Heavy fighting ensued, but the attack was eventually repulsed. The enemy had suffered 8 killed, while the 2nd 7th had lost 2 men. One of them was Trooper Francis Whitehouse, who was killed during the fighting. His brothers, who were there with him at the time, removed his personal effects and arranged to have them sent back to his widow Florence before burying him where he fell. The following day, his brother Ivor was killed during the push to capture Sanananda. His wife later posted an in memoriam notice in the local newspaper which read, "To live in the hearts we leave behind is not to die." Frank Whitehouse was 25 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving during the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Trooper Francis Herbert Whitehouse, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff, and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.